Hey, all, welcome to the Defiant Spirit Tool Shed. I want to share with you a tool that I've shared on many platforms, and put out there on social media quite often, but I wanted to have it here. It is one of the most important, perhaps the most important relationship tool I can offer you. It has worked in my marriage, been happily married. Certainly, I've been happily married. I don't know if Ariel has been always happily married, but she's happier when I do use this tool. It's worked in my marriage. It's worked in the people I've helped guide, counsel, and it'll work for you. It's called the 99% rule. Now, what is the 99% rule? I've seen this in my own life, and I've seen it in the people I guide. We get into a relationship. I've officiated at, I don't know, hundreds of weddings. I've never, maybe a couple times, but more often than not, I've never officiated when a bride and a groom hasn't been all in, 100%. I can tell you the handful of times that it hasn't. I haven't tracked them, but I guarantee you if I did track them down, they probably aren't married today. However, it's not a guarantee that those who I officiated at who are 100% in are still married, but I bet they beat the odds. I bet disproportionately they are. But it doesn't just happen at the wedding canopy, or even if you're not officially married, although I think there is something to the 100% rule and marriage. But again, if you're living with somebody, if you're in a romantic relationship, and usually this is really all about sort of those intimate romantic relationships, as you'll hear, translates differently to parent-child relationships or siblings or friends. But it certainly is true there. But I'm talking primarily intimate relationships. Why? Because here's what happens in an intimate relationship with that other, that significant other, that one who you want to be with, and you're all in, you're 100%, you're showing up. However, it feels like there's a piece of them that's holding back. It isn't to say that they're all out. They're not. They're still in the relationship, but it doesn't feel, and in Kabbalah we call it midah keneged midah, measure for measure. That's the translation. It doesn't feel reciprocal. It doesn't feel equivalent. And if it's not sustainable. You cannot sustain a relationship that's 100%, 99%. You can sustain that a lot longer than 100% and 50% or 100% and 1%. That's almost dead. But 100%, 99%, it's sort of like driving around town with your wheels misaligned. You can do it. You don't have to change them out. And do the tire rotation at your Jiffy Lube every single time or ever. However, you can drive with no oil and you can drive with misalignment for a while. But the worse it gets, the shorter the life of that car. The same is true in a relationship. And here's what happens. I'm all in, they're not all in. Well, you know what? They're only giving 99%. And I'm not going to get caught off guard. Not this time. Happened to me the last time. I'm not going to get hurt. And so I'm going to pull back. You know what I'm going to give? I'm still going to give so much. I'm just not all in. I'm going to give 98%. And that's so negligible, so minimal. It's just going to come out in the little things. Maybe I won't, do this for them or contribute that, or just won't say yes quite as often, or maybe it won't change anything empirically. I'll just change the way I show up. Just pull back a little bit of the energy. Of course, it's not always conscious. Sometimes, oftentimes, most of the times, it's unconscious. It just starts happening. We're energetic beings. We can feel when somebody's all in, and we can feel when a toe is in, dipping in the water, and we can feel everything in between. Well, then he or she sees what you are doing, and they pull back to 98%. And you, consciously, unconsciously, energetically, pull back further, and they pull back further, and they pull back further. And pretty soon you see where this gets. And it doesn't have to go all the way down to zero. That's not how relationships fall apart. There's always a tipping point, right? Read Malcolm Gladwell. There's always this point where on the way up, you sort of tip and and you're in and you're committed. But there's also a way where it tips and you don't have enough, a critical mass. When I used to live in Israel, they were always watching the Sea of Galilee because they used to always be dealing with droughts. They've sort of solved some of that problems through technology. But back in the day, back in the first time I lived there, back in the 90s, it was always in the newspaper or on the radio, we're at X amount of meters before we hit the red line. And the problem was that they knew if they dipped below the red line, this critical mass, the ecosystem would actually be destroyed. So even if you fill it back up again, it's hard to recreate the ecosystem. The same is true in a relationship. The red line isn't 0%. The red line is different for everybody in every situation, but I'm guessing it's sort of like in our grading scenarios. A, no brainer, it's good. B, solid. We're moving forward. C, I don't know. It could go either way. D, probably not. And F, no way, Jose. I'm guessing the C is where you start hitting the tipping point. You still have a shot at rebuilding it above the permanently damaged ecosystem, but you go below it. Even sometimes if you try and rebuild it, it's hard to get back that trust. It's hard to get back that commitment. It's hard to get back to that place where I'm all in. So don't get to the red line and don't get a failing grade and stand guard, because better to, as a coach once said in back in high school regarding wrestling, it's better to, even if you lose, to have left it all on the mat, to have been all in. Because if it does fail, then you're not the one who held back. You're not the 99% guy, the 99% gal, the one that just lived with that little bit of fear. And that little bit of fear goes a long ways to polluting the waters, to tainting the other person's energy and causing them to go in reaction. And this is a downward spiral. So defy the reaction, as I say in all my tools. Don't allow your circumstances, whatever it might be. And it can be more than just relationships. It can be your art. It can be your job. It can be whatever it is you're doing. 100%. 99% sounds like it's good. Some things it is, but most things it's not good enough. Don't live with regrets. Leave it all on the mat. 100% all in. And that's the 99% rule. Until we meet in the next tool, get out there, defy your number, defy your circumstances, defy that 99% and live all in. Live a life of responsibility, able to respond by living 100% life.